I was having a headset problem before, just checking if you guys can hear me. Okay. And we'll wait a few more minutes here. Pour my coffee. Quarter's almost over, guys. Make sure and give you guys credit for being here. Okay, let me switch over to the agenda here. All right, taking a break from grammar this week. Pick that back up again next week. Now, vocab. Should have already completed the vocab test on Friday, or at least over the weekend after I gave you some reminders. If you have not, please make sure and do that soon. Okay, so I separated, it's basically a 40-point test grade, but I'm separating it into two 20-point grades to make it less confusing. So as long as you've done that test already, no matter what you got, and I'm not checking it, you're gonna, then I put in your 20 points. And if you didn't, then you have a 0 out of 20 for a test grade, and that's killing you. Okay, so please get that in there. It's a little late now, but it's not too late. Okay, probably tonight. Actually, no, by tomorrow. So tomorrow morning, I'll return all those received, and I'll post an answer key. Okay, just like I do for grammar exercise and stuff like that. But here, you're going to use that to check your answers. So I'll return your tests so you can access them easily again, and I want you to clearly correct them. Okay, I want to see marks on there one way or another. It'd be good if you could use some color or something. And I want you to show that you figured out what you got, how many you answered correctly out of 20 or 25, what it is. I don't care how you do it, as long as I can see that you've done it and that you correct for the right answers, and that way you're kind of finishing learning the words. Okay, any of you guys have any questions about that? Does that make sense? And then and then I'll have a new post for you to resubmit it by Wednesday night. Okay, post the answer key tomorrow. You guys have tomorrow and Wednesday to do it. It's not going to take any time, right? That's not a whole lot of work. You just got to make sure you do it and follow up. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Other big thing going on is we're continuing to finish Romeo and Juliet, of course, and you should have gotten the study guide in on Act 3 by last night at the latest. So let's kind of talk through those questions. I haven't put up stuff for Act 4 yet. I'm still deciding when I'm going to have it due because I kind of want a clean end to the quarter. So it's not going to be due this week. Okay. The rest of this week, after we go over this today, should just be you guys finishing up any other stuff. If you're totally on top of your stuff, you correct that vocab test tomorrow, you are done for the quarter. Okay. But I'm leaving a little cushion for anybody who's kind of behind. So spread the word, since it's more responsible folks on top of it that I'm seeing here. Okay. And I'll continue to put reminders on Google Classroom. Okay, let's go over here. And Juliet, Act 3. And there's our study guide. So we have this passage. This gentleman, the prince's near ally, my very friend, hath got this mortal hurt on my behalf. Who's he talking about there? Who's Romeo saying? With Tybalt's slander, Tybalt, that an hour hath been my kinsman, sweet Juliet, thy beauty hath made me, Romeo, effeminate, and in my temper softened valor steel. Can anybody kind of put you guys on more of a grid here? Can anybody kind of paraphrase what happened in the scene? Do you understand the action of when Tybalt comes along, spoiling for a fight, runs into Benvolio and Mercutio? Romeo's not around. And then what happens? Do we get what happened? Did you guys were you guys able to process the action of what happens in that scene? No? Tybalt shows up, and who's he looking for? He's mad at him all the way from the party. Who's he looking for? Not Benvolio and Mercutio, but who? I got somebody going to the chat, of course. I think. Thank you, Ethan. Yes, he's looking for Romeo, right? So, well, Mercutio and Benvolio are trying to handle Tybalt, right? And Mercutio, Romeo comes up, right? And then Tybalt is going to pick on him, right? And he's going to insist on trying to pick a fight with him. And Romeo says some stuff that doesn't make any sense to Tybalt. He says, your name that I love as dearly as mine own. Why does Romeo want to make peace with Tybalt and say that he loves him in his name as dearly as his own? Doesn't make sense that a Montague would say that, right? Huge dramatic irony here, right? Because we know that Romeo is what? I wish you guys would unmute and just talk. You guys realize that Romeo already married Juliet at the end of Act 2, right? Right, with Friar Lawrence. Okay, so what he's saying to Tybalt is, you're family to me, right? He's saying it, but it doesn't make any sense to Tybalt because Tybalt has no idea that he's married Juliet. And if he did, he would completely freak out, even worse than he is, right? So Mercutio can't stand that Tybalt is picking on Romeo, right? So he picks a fight with him. So Tybalt and Mercutio are fighting, and then Romeo tries to get between them, right? And he cuts off their sight, and Tybalt thrusts toward Mercutio, and Mercutio can't see enough to block it, and Mercutio gets wounded. And then he jokes around a lot, and they can't tell whether he's really hurt or not, but he is, and he dies. And then, of course, Romeo, we got this line here, kind of going back to the study guide here. Okay, so just prior to this passage, Tybalt has killed Romeo's friend Mercutio while Romeo rushed between them. Mercutio in his dying moments curses both the Capulets and the Montagues when he says, a plague on both your houses, like a curse on you, right? Because it's you. Remember, Mercutio is not a Montague or Capulet. So he's basically saying, it should like a curse on both your houses, right? You've caused me to bleed out and to die right now. He seems to blame Romeo for intruding on the fight and causing his fatal injury. So in this passage, after Benvolio takes Mercutio away and he dies, Romeo seems to realize what he has just done. He blames his peaceful behavior, refusing to fight with Tybalt, on Juliet's beauty. And shortly after the passage, he will vow that fire-eyed fury be my conduct. Now, he's so mad at himself that then he decides to direct his anger toward Tybalt. And when Tybalt comes back, he kills him, right? And the question there is, does the evidence of the play so far suggest that Juliet's beauty has made Romeo effeminate? And that's kind of that would be kind of a sexist way of putting it for us, right? It's a dated way of putting it. We wouldn't say that, oh, you're being weak like a girl. I hope you wouldn't say that, guys. What point is Shakespeare making about gender roles by having Romeo blame his behavior on the street fight Juliet? So what we were looking for there, is that the fact that he says made me effeminate, made me like a girl, shows us that the gender roles were very dated then, and that associating someone with being like a woman would be calling them weak, right? And we at least try not to think that way anymore, right? So it's kind of a dated way of putting it. It doesn't mean Shakespeare was like a sexist pig or something. It was a sign of the times, right? Okay, so to the main questions, kind of put you guys back in a row here. After Mercutio's death, Romeo states that Juliet's okay, and that kind of answers that question too. So that's what he meant by that. Let's go on to 2. What is Juliet suggesting? She says when she says she has bought the mansion of a love but not possessed it, and though I am sold, not yet enjoyed. Anybody want to tackle that one? Can anybody answer number 2? You guys are probably going to be scared to say it because we need to answer that with a little maturity. Do I see chat going on here? I'm switching back and forth between. I can't look at the chat when I have you guys minimized. She is talking about being married, right? But she's talking about how she's technically married, but she hasn't had a chance to enjoy it, right? In other words, she hasn't been able to see Romeo and truthfully, like, spend the night with Romeo to celebrate their marriage. We'll just leave it at that. Okay. All right. Back to the study guide again. Question 3 was, what is Juliet's reaction to the news that Romeo killed Tybalt? Obviously, that's going to be bad news, right? She's horrified because she has this mixed reaction, right? Like, what have I gotten into? I can't believe this has happened. And just think about that. Like, the person that she just married has killed her cousin, right? And so she's and she hears that he's banished, right, from the nurse after the nurse finishes, like taking her time and misinforming her and not giving a very good answer to what's happened. Once she finally gets it out, Juliet's horrified, almost as if that is even worse than if Romeo were executed, which he could have been, right? Like the prince could have decided to execute him. What would you have done if you were the prince? It's kind of tough, right? Because he said the next person that fights in the streets is going to be executed. So who kills whom first? Well, Tybalt kills Mercutio. So theoretically, he would have executed Tybalt, right? But then what happens to Tybalt? He's already dead, right? Because Romeo kills him. So is Romeo just carrying out what the law would have done anyway? That's what Lord and Lady Montague, his parents, argue, right? But the prince doesn't feel like he can do nothing. So that's why he decides to banish him instead. But to Romeo and Juliet, that almost seems worse, right? Because it would mean that they're both alive, but they can't be with each other. Now, you might think of, often at this time, people think of another solution to that. Okay. So if Romeo is banished, oops, sorry. If Romeo is banished, what would you tell them to do? Well, why don't you just what? Why doesn't Juliet just, you tell me, if they were to do something desperate enough, how could Juliet still be with him? Throw it into chat or speak. Yeah, just leave, right? As in run off, right, Elias? Yeah. Well, the main reason for that is because she's like your age, okay? So especially for a girl during this time and someone at this age, if she just runs off, if they're not going to just accept that. They're probably going to try to chase her down and find her, right? So they're trying to figure out some other strategy for that, but they're not there yet. Okay, let's get back over to the study guide. So 4 was after her mother tells Juliet that she'll be marrying Paris on Thursday. Juliet says, I wonder at this haste. Haste means hurry. That I must wed ere, and ere means before he that should be husband comes to woo. Now they're talking about Paris there, right? What is she criticizing here? Now she's kind of covering herself, right? Because truth be told, she can't marry Paris because she's already married to Romeo. It's just nobody knows. Dramatic irony, right? We already know that. But her cover for that is pretending that she is upset that the wedding seems too what to her. Moving the wedding up to Thursday seems what? And that's how she's expressing her frustration to her parents. Somebody answer that. Number 4, too fast. Thank you, Elias. Exactly. Seems too fast. Like she barely even knows him. And that's true, right? That wouldn't necessarily be a problem with a lot of marriages then because they were kind of arranged, right? But she has a good excuse to be upset about because it just seems really fast right after her cousin's death. And that is true. That's not untrue, right? But of course, we know the really even deeper reason why she can't really marry. I mean, she could, but she'd be married to 2 different people then, right? But her parents don't know that. How does Juliet's father react to her refusal to marry? So that scene shuts down with you know, she's the mom has told Juliet, right? And she reacts that way. Okay. And then the father comes in here that she's refused. And what does he do? That's what kind of closes up that scene. He isn't happy and he yells. Yes. Accurate answer. Good job. He said he would disown her and kick her out. Good job, Ethan. Good specifics there, right? He even says at one point his fingers itch like he's going to slap her or something, right? So we've seen a pretty caring father up until this point, but now that she's decided to disobey him, and he has no idea how much that she's disobeying him, of course, right? We know a lot more, but yeah, he kind of flips out. It's ugly, right? Like it's almost like he's like, you know, going to become abusive or something. So she's desperate, and then there isn't a question about this, but did you notice what the nurse does? What does the nurse go ahead and say to Juliet after the dad, who is her boss, freaks out on her like that? What does the nurse say? You should just what? Anybody process that? It's not what Juliet wants to hear from the nurse. The nurse has been her buddy, right? But she loses her trust here because the nurse suggests that she, what? Go ahead and marry with the county, which means the Count Paris. So the nurse has been scared enough by Juliet's father, right? That she's saying, just go ahead and marry Paris. You know, he's a nice guy. He's a man of wax, she says. He's handsome. And there's nothing to make us think that Paris isn't a nice guy and a good guy. He's just a blocking figure, right? He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know Juliet's in love with Romeo. He thinks all this should be normal and expected, right? So we don't want to think he's like an evil antagonist or anything, right? But it's kind of sad because, like, you know, Juliet has had the nurse and Romeo has had um, the friar to talk to as kind of surrogate parent figures who are working on their side. Now Juliet doesn't have that anymore. All she has is the friar, right? Okay, that kind of wraps us up. I have the feeling some of us might be a little bit behind on the reading. So if you haven't finished that study guide and you're paying attention here, I hope you finish reading it, but you can also kind of fill that in. And remember, always let me know when you've turned any assignments late. And I will think about when I want you guys to do Act 4 and get that posted either tonight or tomorrow morning. But in the meantime, I want you guys just to focus on making sure you follow up on this vocab test corrections that I post tomorrow morning, and then any other homeworks that you have that you want to make up, which could at least be for partial credit, get done in the next few days. And then, of course, the personal narrative, okay, because I still have a number of people who have not turned that in. Okay. All good. Okay. Good to see you guys. See you tomorrow.